Welcome to my itemization guide for set 4. In this video, I will cover every single item and go in depth on all of its different usages. I will also touch on how the meta changes which items you want to make. Every item is timestamped in the description, and with every single one, I will cover the best users of the item, if the item has any powerful combos, how slammable the item is, as well as covering what the best item carriers are for each one. First item is Infinity Edge, also known as IE. This item is mostly used for AD units to get a consistent increase in their damage output. Assassins also really like this item as they get a 100% crit chance. This paired with a synergy that gives them increased crit damage results in a much larger damage output for them. This item is commonly paired with either Last Whisper or Juewled Gauntlet. Some common users for this item are Akali, Talon, Jhin, Yasuo, and Ahri. Some of the better item carriers for this are Diana, Nidalee, Vayne, Yasuo, and Zed. This item is pretty slammable, meaning it is flexible as most carriers in the game can utilize it, and it is best in slot for some units as well. Giant Slayer. This is a counter item, meaning it is used to counter units with an HP total of 1750 or more. Therefore, it's a great item to build to counter brawlers, Galio, and 3-star units. It will also proc on most 2-star frontliners that have some form of HP items on them. This item gives 90% bonus damage, so it effectively doubles your damage output in some cases. It works with any type of damage, so this can be thrown on both AD and AP carries. This item is fairly slammable as it can fit into any comp, but its effectiveness is based on the lobby and the current meta. Some of the better item carriers include Lissandra, Nidalee, TF, Yasuo, Teemo, and Zed. Hand of Justice, also known as Hajj, is an inconsistent item. It either gives 50% more damage or heals you for 50% of the damage dealt. If you roll damage, there's a red ball in the center of the champion, and if you roll healing, there's a yellow circle around the bottom of the champion. This item is really good on units that do a lot of consistent damage. The more damage a unit does, the more value they get out of Hajj. So this goes great on units that already have 1 or 2 damage items. The healing part of this item gets countered by grievous wounds, so watch out for that. Some of the better item carriers for this item are Diana, Lissandra, TF, Yasuo, and Zed, but pretty much any 2-star DPS unit will do well with it. Some of the better late game users of this item are Ashe, Jhin, Talon, Kayn, and Yone. In some cases, this item works on Morgana, Riven, and Warwick as well. This item is super flexible, so I would always slam this on stage 2-1. Stattick Shiv is a great item in the early game due to the base damage it provides. It also does increase true damage to shields, which is a lobby and meta dependent item, meaning that the strength of the item will vary a lot. Therefore, I do not slam this item unless a comp like Keepers or Locket become OP and show up everywhere. This item is best used by high attack speed units like Ashe, Warwick, Vayne, Kindred, and Kalista. Some of the better item carriers for this are Vayne, Nidalee, and Yasuo. Bloodthirster, also known as BT, is very similar to Hajj. The more AD you deal, the more value it gets. Works best on carries with 1 or 2 other damage items, and it also gets countered by grievous wounds. Some of the better users of this item are Ashe, Jhin, and Talon. I would never make this item in the early game, but if you do, the only good item carriers are Yasuo or Zed. Deathblade is only good on units that attack multiple people or if you're in a comp that have long fights. This is not a good item to put on a generic front to back DPS unit. This is because those units will target frontline first and then target backline. By the time the frontline is dead, the rest of the backline units get shredded so fast that the extra stacks don't matter. This item goes great on units like Jhin if he has Sharpshooter, or Ashe if you have Hunters in. This item also combines very strongly with Hajj, BT, Runaans Hurricane, and Giant Slayer, as the item makes them do even more damage. I would not slam this item as it is not flexible, but if you do, put it on Nidalee, Vayne, Yasuo, or Zed. Last Whisper, also known as LW, is a great item that counters Vanguards and Elderwoods. This is a meta and lobby dependent item as it does very little to the other units in the game. This item is a lot stronger if paired with IE, as the auto attacks crit and shred armor 100% of the time. If you don't have IE, then this is only good on units with high attack speed like Ashe, while it is terrible on Jhin as he attacks slow. I would not slam this item due to the inconsistent value you get from it, but the better item carriers for it are Yasuo, Nidalee, Vayne, and Zed. Runaans Hurricane is a niche item that is only good on certain units or paired with certain items. It makes units attack 2 different targets at the same time, so it only values high AD units. This item is pretty good when paired with Deathblade, as you get stacks on Deathblade a lot faster. It is also probably the best item for Kalista, as she auto-attacks 2 units and therefore executes 2 units at the same time. I would not slam this item due to it not being flexible. The item carriers for this are yet again Nidalee, Vayne, Yasuo, and Zed. Chalice of Power, also known as Ice Cream Cone, is a great item if you are running multiple AP threats, or have multiple units that scale well with AP. This item does make your positioning more limited as you have to put 3 units in a line, so make sure that you can put this item on a unit that you can move around a lot. This item goes great with Zekes Herald, as they both require you to have 3 units in a line. This item is great on Assassins and Shades, as you can put them anywhere. It's also great on units like Yuumi and Kindred, as they move around a lot during fights. This item is super flexible, so I would slam this on 2-1. The better item carriers for this are Diana, Lissandra, Nidalee, TF, Janna, and Teemo. Juewled Gauntlet is a decent item on most AP units, but core on other units like Ahri. This item is also worthless on Assassins, as their spells already crit with a trait, so IE is definitely better on them. This item is slammable in some metas where AP carries like Set and Ahri are viable, but if that's not the case, then it's not the most flexible item. The better item carriers for this are Lissandra, TF, Teemo, and Garen. Ludens Echo is a very niche item. Much like Stattick Shiv, it does large amount of base damage in the early game and does increased damage to units that are CC'd. This results in this item being insanely strong on units like Nami, Teemo, and Jinx, as their spells already CC the target and therefore get the increased damage from Ludens. This item is not slammable unless you're planning on playing Nami carry. Rabbadons Deathcap, also known as Hat, is an item that works on any AP carry. It can also work on units like Janna and Yuumi to give bigger shields and healing. This item is flexible if you're playing an AP comp, but if you're not sure, I would not slam it, as it has very little use in AD comps. The item carriers for this item are TF, Lissandra, Diana, Nidalee, and Vayne. Ionic Spark is a damage item and not a defensive item. This might seem counterintuitive to newer players, as this item often goes on tanks. This is due to it reducing magic resistance and deals damage to nearby enemies. Therefore, this item wants to go on units that get up in the enemy's face, like tanks, or put it on Assassins and Shades as they jump into the enemy backline. This item is incredibly strong early game, so I would slam it just to push a win streak. It is also very flexible, as it fits into a lot of comps late game. The item carriers for this item is any upgraded frontliner with 1 hex attack range, or an assassin or shade unit. Hextech Gunblade. This item works much like Bloodthirster, only for AP, so this item goes great on units that already deal a ton of AP like Veigar, Katarina, Akali, and Set. It's not very flexible as it has very few users, so I would not slam this in the early game. If you are running it, some of the better item carriers are Diana, TF, Lissandra, and Teemo. Multi-purpose items are items that can be offensive, defensive, or utility-based items. Which effect the item gives depends on which unit it goes on. Guinsoos Rageblade. This item is great on units with high base attack speed, as that is the stat this item scales off of. It is great on units like Kalista and Ashe to bring more offensive power, and can also be used on units like Azir or Janna to provide defensive and utility with quicker mana regeneration, kind of like a budget Spear of Sojin. This item is incredibly flexible, but not great on any carry. Therefore, it falls into a weird category as an all-arounder kind of item. I would slam this on 2-1 as the fights last very long in the early and mid game, resulting in this item getting great value. Blue buff. This item can be an offensive item on units like Kindred and Akali, or it can be a defensive item on units like Yuumi and Janna. It can also be used on units like Sejuani or Jax to make them get their big impactful spells off quicker. This item is flexible and can fit into a lot of comps, so I would slam this item if you have a good item carrier for it. and they are Nami, Lysandra, TF, Teemo, and Janna. A question you might have about this item is whether blue buff or Spear of Sojin is better on a certain unit. Check out the spreadsheet to get the answer. If you found this helpful, then there are a ton more resources like this on my Discord server. Link in the description. Morellonomicon. This is known as a damage item, but it also serves a big utility purpose. This item applies grievous wounds, which can shut down carries that heal a ton, like Yasuo, and it also counters units with Hajj, Gunblade, and BT. This item is great on units that target multiple people with their spells, like Morgana, Sejuani, Ezreal, and Kennen. There aren't that many great users, so I would not slam this item in the early game. Sunfire Cape works a lot like a Morello, only that this is more damage focused. Since the range of the item is only 2 hexes, it will not hit backline carries that are healing. This item is mostly used as a damage item in the early game to win streak. It also has some usage in comps that have long fights like Brawler or Elderwood Ashe. This item is very flexible as it brings some value to every comp, but it falls off late game. I would always slam this on 2-1 as it gives you a ton of power early game and it will allow you to push a win streak if you have a strong tank. The item carriers for this is your tankiest frontline unit with 1 hex attack range. It can also work on assassins or shades. Zekes Herald works similarly to Spear of Sojin as it provides more attack speed to nearby units to make them ult quicker. It also has the added benefit of letting your carries get higher attack speed as well. This item is super flexible and slammable at every point in the game. Spear of Sojin works much like blue buff, only that this one benefits units with higher mana pools. What I mentioned about blue buff applies to this item as well. It is still very flexible, but generally swords are used up for other items, so I wouldn't slam this in the early game. Rapid Fire Cannon, also known as RFC, is more of an offensive item used to increase range of champions like Akali, but the added range can also let units like Lilia get their ults off without running into the frontline. It also increases the ult range of units like Cassiopeia and Vi, so you don't need to frontline them to get maximum value out of the ultimates. This is not a flexible item, so I would never make this in the early game. If you are slamming it though, the better users are Wukong and Zed. Shroud of Stillness is a great item versus teams that are reliant on spellcasts such as Ahri and Veigar comps. Delaying the cast can save you a ton of time and be able to snowball the fight in your favor. It is also a tank item as it provides 20% dodge chance, so we put this on frontliners that we can move around a lot. This item gets little value in the early game as there are only a couple of units on the board, so you will often completely miss the Shroud. This item shines during the later stages of the game, where people have 7 or more units on the board, and as long as you scout and position properly, you will get value out of it every single turn. Zephyr is an item that has varying impact. Much like Shroud, this item can win you a fight if you Zephyr a carry, and can be useless if you Zephyr a synergy bot. This item requires you to be good at scouting to see where the best Zephyr spots are, so you can get good consistent value out of the item. It is also much more effective in lower elos as people don't swap their boards around as much. This item wants to go on units that you can move around a lot, or a synergy bot that you don't care about if they die or not. Redemption is a very basic item. It is not a tank item as it gives no tank stats to its user. It does provide great healing if it procs at the right time though. This wants to go on frontline units that die fast, but not so fast that the rest of your team hasn't taken any damage yet. This item is okay to slam in the early game, but it gets much more value later into the game. Frozen Heart is great on units that taunt or move into the enemy team. The better users are Shen, Yone, Riven, Lee Sin, Assassins or Shades, as well as solo frontline units. This item is also incredibly powerful if combined with ZZ'Rot, as all the units taunted will get their attack speed slowed. This item is okay to slam in the early game, but there are many other better options than Frozen Heart. ZZ'Rot, also known as Bug, is a great utility item that has a ton of great item combinations, as well as it being the best anti-assassin item in the game. This item synergizes great with Frozen Heart, Gargoyle Stoneplate, Ionic Spark, Bramble Vest, Redemption, and Sunfire Cape. Therefore, it is very powerful if you have already made these items. The taunt has the added benefit of making units like Cassiopeia, Vi, and Yone get a bad ultimate angle. It also can make assassins stop attacking your carry and walk to the ZZ'Rot unit if it's close by. Typically second row is close enough. This item is very strong in the early game as you pretty much get an extra unit on the board. Therefore, I would always slam this on stage 2-1. Trap Claw is a defensive item used on backline carries. It's not as good on other frontline units as it can get procced by non-impactful ults from other frontliners like Maokai, Hecarim, or Garen's ability. However, the 20% dodge chance gives it a bit more tankiness. It is great to counter units like Veigar and Ahri, as Trap Claw negates all the damage from their spell and as well as stunning them for 4 seconds. Put this on any backline carry that you want to keep alive. This item is not very slammable as most of the spells in the early game are not impactful, so if you are making this early, it's more of a tank item. This item becomes a lot better in the later stages of the game. QSS works similarly to Trap Claw, but this item is used to counter multiple CC threats. Much like Trap Claw, this item shines in the late game, where almost every single team has at least one or more impactful CC threats. The biggest benefit of this item is that it makes positioning a lot easier, as you don't have to worry about getting CC'd or Zephyr'd. This item can also work as a frontline item as it gives 20% dodge chance, but it is far superior on a carry that you want to keep safe. This item is not slammable early game, as the big CC threats don't come online until later into the game. GA is an item that is used to keep backline carries safe from assassins, as well as making sure units with high impact spells get their ultimates off. This item is best used on backline carries and lobbies where there are a lot of assassin players. This is because it allows you to not have to turtle around your carry and you get more wiggle room with your positioning. Another thing to note with this item is that while a unit is reviving from GA, items like Frozen Heart, Ionic Spark, and Sunfire are still active. Therefore, putting GA on a frontliner can be a great idea if they already have some of these items on them. This item is slammable in the early game, in some metas, but not in others. More on that at the end of the video. Bramble Vest is used to counter critical strike damage. This item negates 100% of it. This makes it a great item versus units that utilize IE and Juewled Gauntlet, as well as assassins since they get it through their trait. This item also deals damage to nearby enemies. This makes it a really strong item in the early game, as it can turn a 2-star tank into a carry. This item wants to go in your primary tank, or in some niche situations you can put it on a backline carry. This item is also very strong combined with ZZ'Rot, as it taunts multiple enemies and makes them target you, and this allows Bramble Vest to deal even more damage. This item is slammable as it provides so much damage in the early game. The best item carriers are any 2-star frontliners with 1 hex attack range. Dragonclaw is the premier counter to AP damage. It is very basic, and it's an item you want to make if you see there are multiple Veigar, Ahri, and Dusk comps in the lobby. This item has increased value late game as most of the big AP threats come online at that point in the game. This item goes best on your primary tanks, and this item is not great to slam in the early game as there are not a lot of AP threats that early. Gargoyle Stoneplate is great on non-Vanguard units and solo frontline units. This is used to make one unit incredibly tanky. The more HP a unit has, the more value they get out of this item. Naturally, that makes this item great to put on brawlers and 3-star units. Combine this with a ZZ'Rot, and you have a tank with a ton of armor and magic resist. This item is slammable in the early game, but the item gets more value later as there are more units on the board targeting the champion. The better item carriers for this item are any 2-star frontliners. Locket is a great early game item if you have a 2-star unit, as it provides a ton of frontline to your team. Even though your positioning gets more limited, the value you get from the shields is worth it. This item does fall off in the late game, but it is a very slammable item early game and mid game. The better users for this item is any 2-star unit that you can move around. Warmogs is an item that strictly gives you more HP. This is great on units like Vanguards as they already have really high armor. It is also really good on units that are a bit too squishy to get their impactful ultimates off. This item gets countered by Giant Slayer, so the better a Giant Slayer is, the worse Warmog will be. This item is fine to slam on 2-1 if you have multiple belts. These are items that don't really fall into any category due to them being very unique. First one is Thives Gloves, also known as TG. This item gives you 20% dodge chance and 1 or 2 completely random items. This is insanely good value for 2 components. This item usually goes on your secondary tank, but can also work on a unit that can use both AP and AD items like Kindred and Akali. This item is incredibly strong early game, but falls off late game due to the inconsistency of the items you get. Therefore, I would always slam this on 2-1, but would not make this later into the game. Titan's Resolve is another weird and niche item. It's a damage and tank item at the same time. However, it only works on some units under specific circumstances. The units that can use this are tanky units that also do a lot of damage. In this set, the best users are 4-star Diana with IE, 3-star Yasuo with IE, 3-star Annie, as well as Riven. Most other 3-star units can also utilize this item well. I would not slam this item as it's not flexible at all. Lastly, I want to touch on how the meta changes what items you want to make and what you don't want to make. A lot of items are good in a vacuum, but at the end of the day, there is a meta in TFT, and in any given meta, some comps and items will be stronger than others. So if you want to take your itemization skills to the next level, you have to pay attention to the meta. To give an example, if comps that are reliant on spellcast like Ahri and Veigar are OP and seeing a lot of play, then Shroud of Stillness will go up in value as it directly counters them. Therefore, you might not be able to slam Thives Gloves on 2-1 anymore, as you have to save one glove for a Shroud. Another example is if Brawlers become meta, then Giant Slayer will go up in value, and then you won't be able to slam bow or sword items as you need to save them for a Giant Slayer. I also mentioned some items that I would not slam, but this can change in a meta where the best users of the item is OP. An example was this when Stattick Shiv on Warwick was OP. Some remember this as War Week, where you had more than half the lobby forcing Warwick with Stattick Shiv and Divine. Same thing with defensive items, none of them will always be the best for your backline carry. QSS will be the best if most people are playing units like Aatrox, Sejuani, Morgana, and Jinx, but if the meta favors more spellcast units like mages, then Trapclaw will be the best. And if the meta favors assassins or shades, then GA will be the best. So make sure to pay attention to the meta before slamming items, and also scout the lobby to see which items are going to have more value than others. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment down below what video you want me to make next, and if you want to get better at TFT, join the Discord. We got over 1,000 other players there who are hungry to climb. And if you want to get coached by me, the information is over on the Discord server as well. So take care, and see you in the next video.